Have you ever walked away from a conversation thinking, why did I tell them this? Maybe this is someone you barely knew on your first date or on social media. We can all agree that at some point in life, we have overshared, and more often than not, the outcome was painful or unpleasant. As a result of that, it is natural for us to want to protect ourselves and say things like, I will never open up to anyone again, and it is understandable. Before we go further, let's make sure we are talking about the same thing. Oversharing is telling people more than you should, especially to the wrong person or in the wrong setting. And if you're thinking, isn't that just something women do? Not really. Women often overshare emotional struggles, while men are more likely to overshare through bragging about their success, achievements, and financial status. Although what they tend to overshare is different, one thing is clear. Oversharing affects both men and women. Before we continue, if you're new here, welcome. I'm Winnie Marita from Your Mind is the Limit community, where we challenge limiting beliefs and grow from the inside out. If this kind of content resonates with you, consider subscribing and become a part of this community. I used to think that being honest meant sharing everything until things blew up on my face and I had to learn how to stay authentic without giving everyone access to every part of my life. If you've had an experience where oversharing blew up on your face, please leave a comment below. So why do we do this? Why do we sometimes tell people things we shouldn't? The first reason is we are wired for connection. That is why we don't struggle to overshare. It is natural because when we open up, we feel seen, heard, and cared for. Have you ever noticed how after sharing what's been burdening you with someone, you feel lighter? Oversharing often feels relieving in the moment because speaking releases emotional pressure. But once the emotion settles, you realize you shared something with someone who never earned that level of trust. The second reason is seeking validation. This is one of the biggest reasons I used to overshare. Every time I shared my successes and achievements, it gave me a sense of validation. Every compliment, every I'm proud of you, or you're doing amazing gave me a temporary boost. The problem is that external validation is temporary. It never truly satisfies, which means the cycle of oversharing continues. The third reason is social media rewards oversharing. These social media platforms often reward drama, extreme emotions, and controversy. In pursuit of followers, views, and engagement, people end up sharing intimate parts of their lives that were never meant for the internet. The more personal, emotional, or controversial a post is, the more attention it receives. Over time, this can create an illusion that the more you reveal, the more valuable or relatable your content becomes. Before you know it, the line between being authentic and exposing too much starts to blur. Remember, just because something gets attention doesn't mean it should be shared. Not everything that's personal needs to be public. The fourth reason is poor awareness of boundaries. When you don't have clear personal boundaries, it is hard to know what should be shared and what should remain private. Not everyone deserves immediate access to every part of your life. Trust is built over time. So your vulnerability should be shared gradually as people earn it by proving they can handle it with care. Understanding why we overshare doesn't change the fact that oversharing can have real consequences. Let's look at a few of them. When you overshare, you increase the risk of attracting people for the wrong reasons. For example, when you share how much you earn, some people may become your friends, not because of who you are, but because they believe that you'll always pick up the bill. Another example is when you are on a first date and you openly describe all the qualities you're looking for in a partner. Someone with dishonest intentions can pretend to have these qualities to gain your trust, get what they want, then disappear. I'm not saying you shouldn't share anything on a date. What I'm saying is that you need to be mindful and careful about what you share, especially early on. Not everyone has good intentions, and being discerning can protect you from manipulation or being taken advantage of. The other thing is emotional dependency. We all need people, and there is nothing wrong with opening up or asking for support. The problem begins when you've never learned how to process your emotions on your own. Then every time something happens, the first reaction is to call or find someone to vent to. Gradually, this can create emotional dependency. placing an unhealthy burden on your friends and loved ones. It can also strain your relationships because life has its ebbs and flows, and the people around you are also dealing with their own problems. The goal is not to stop sharing your struggles. The goal is to develop the ability to process your emotions in healthy ways before turning to someone else for reassurance. That way, you share from a place of intention rather than dependence. So when are you most vulnerable to overshare? Because if you can recognize these moments, you'll be more likely to catch yourself before you reveal something you'll regret later. When experiencing strong emotions, you're more likely to overshare. Emotions can cloud your judgment. Whether you're sad, angry, or excited, you're less likely to pause and think through what you're about to share. That's why it is often wise to wait until your emotions have settled before sharing something deeply personal. The other thing is loneliness can intensify your desire for connection, making you more likely to overshare just to keep the conversation going. Whenever you sense the conversation dying down, you may start talking more and sharing increasingly personal details just to keep the interaction alive. Last but not least is alcohol and substances can impair your judgment and lower self-control, making you more likely to share personal information that you normally would have kept private. One of the biggest mistakes we make is treating every relationship the same. We assume that because someone is kind, friendly, or easy to talk to, they've earned access to our deepest thoughts. Not every relationship is the same, and you should not open up to everyone in the same way. The goal is not to stop being open, it is to share based on the trust someone has earned. Think of your relationships like 4 circles, with each circle representing a different level of trust. The outer circle is made up of acquaintance, people you know but don't have a deep relationship with. These are people you might see at the gym, at church, or in other places you frequently visit. With people in this circle, it is perfectly fine to share general opinions, common interests, hobbies, and everyday experiences. The second circle is friends. Depending on how much they've earned your trust, these are people who go beyond shared interests and hobbies. These are people who have shown that they are trustworthy, supportive, and capable of handling personal information with care. With people in this circle, you can have meaningful conversations about areas of your life like relationships, family, and personal struggles. The third circle is made up of your closest relationships. These are people who have consistently earned your trust by their character, loyalty, and discretion. With people in this circle, you can be deeply vulnerable. You can share your fears, struggles, dreams, failures, and the parts of your life that you wouldn't share with just anyone. Because these people have access to the most personal parts of your life, you need to be intentional and careful who you allow into this circle. At the very center is your innermost circle. This is your personal space. This is where you keep the parts of your life that are not meant to be shared by everyone. It includes your deepest prayers, personal convictions, private struggles, other people's confidential information, and certain vulnerabilities that are still being worked through. For me, this is a space that belongs to me and God. Not everything needs an audience. Some things are meant to be processed in prayer, reflected on privately, and shared only if and when wisdom calls for it. Once you've categorized your relationships into these circles, it becomes much easier to know what to share and with whom. You no longer feel the pressure to tell everyone everything because you understand different information requires different level of trust. And this allows you to be authentic at every level without sacrificing privacy. The second thing is to develop the habit of pausing before sharing something. The same applies to social media. Before you post something, ask yourself, why am I sharing this? Is it because you're looking for attention and validation, or are you genuinely trying to inform, encourage, or connect with others? Sometimes the best thing you can do is wait. A simple pause can save you from saying something you'd later regret. When you combine healthy boundaries with intentional communication, you don't have to choose between being authentic and protecting your privacy. You can have both. Not everyone needs access to every part of your life, and that's okay. At the beginning of this video, I said, many people respond to oversharing by deciding I'll never open up again, but that is not the answer. The answer is not closing your mouth, it is opening it wisely. If you've made it this far, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I'll see you in the next episode.